But first, Jennifer Carroll McNeil of Fine Gael, thank you for joining us. I think there was a perception amongst many people that the last government was very heavily influenced by the Green Party, and that was something that many of the public reacted against. Is this new government going to be as heavily influenced by rural TDs at the expense of urban, perhaps, supporters of the government?
As an urban-based TD, no, it won't. And I think what you'll see in this government is a focus on the whole island, very strong regional strategy, a very strong whole island approach to growing our electricity grid and powering that with renewable energy, maintain a very strong focus on climate, but being real about bringing people with us on public transport, expanding roads and ports. All of these things have to happen together. This government is focused on delivering for Ireland, on delivering a stable government, which at a difficult time in the world is a differentiated thing and a very important thing. We have the capital to invest in our infrastructure. We need that. It needs to be delivered. And that's what this focus of this government is on, both urban and rural.
But how is it going to differ from the last government?
Well, for example, there's a different focus on the need for urgent capital investment in the grid, for example, prioritising renewable energy and having that connected, a different understanding of how data and data centres work in that industrial policy for the future, and making sure that that's very much part of the renewable solution, not an obstacle to developing the grid. There's also a very strong focus then on social issues as well, led by our focus on disability, which I believe is the social focus of this next government. A different emphasis being placed on older people, on mental health, with two different ministers of state being prioritised in those areas to have a real focus on those. Disability being amplified at the cabinet level. And then important things like patient safety, for example, and really prioritising those incidents of where parents have to go to court and making that a much more mediated system for parents. So there's a whole range of different issues. This is a very long document, which I hope people will have the opportunity to read. The parliamentary parties are looking at it now. This will be ratified by Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil. The independents have their own process. But this provides the basis for a 5-year stable government for 5 budgets, which is what I believe, having gone through the election, people want to see stability and strength in this government for the next 5 years.
Just before I bring Padraig McLaughlin in on that, in particular, one of the big issues in the election, and one that Simon Harris got into particular difficulty on in the week before the election, was the issue of relation to carers. What is the situation going to be about the means testing of the carers allowance?
As we said during the election, we will work to remove the means test for carers throughout the period of the government. That's what our commitment was, and that is what we're going to do.
But yeah, there's a lot of commitments were made by the parties in the run-up. Though some of those are diluted, though, this one has gone into the programme for government, has it?
It's in the programme for government. Now, that's a matter for the Minister for Social Protection to do over a number of budgets, and also to make sure that, to do over a number of budgets, and to look at, for example, it's not clear to me that although we've expanded the eligibility for carers over the last 3 budgets, that the number of carers has actually increased. So why is that? It should be more, in my view. And I want to make sure that we're drilling down into the why that's happening. If we're expanding eligibility, well, I want people to take it up.
A lot of listeners are pointing out already, texting into 0874 100 102. Why are you not mentioning housing?
Excuse me, housing has a whole chapter. Forgive me, Matt. This is a big document in front of me. Housing is a huge priority of the next government. It's a major infrastructure priority. It's a major social priority as well. And there is we have brought together in many ways many of the different measures that enable better affordability in housing into a starter homes package. So that, I think, will make it easier for people to see the different schemes, to see how they may be eligible, and to work out what's best for them, given whether they're urban or rural or their different stage in life. So forgive me, of course, there's a huge focus on that, as there is on health, as there is on the economy, as there is on infrastructure. This is a considerable document.
Padraig McLaughlin of Sinn Féin, you've been frustrated now with 2 elections in your efforts to get into government. What do you make of the way that this has been set up to try and guarantee that the parts of the government will be in place for 5 years, that you're not going to get another shot until November 2029?
Well, it remains to be seen if the deal that they've done with the independent TDs is one that's going to last. That remains to be seen. We know that Micheál Martin was determined to keep Sinn Féin out of government. He was determined to put Fine Gael back in. That means that Fine Gael will be in power if they last the full term, almost a generation. And I don't think that was in the interest of the Irish people. If you look at the main crises, Matt, housing, and it's very telling that Jennifer didn't lead out on that. Housing, health services, cost of living. These are the real crises across Irish society. These are the issues that people are looking for solutions. And if you look through the documents, you have lots of vague language. You have consider, seek to, if you compare, in the housing commitments and in the health service commitments, any objective person, if you go through this programme for government versus a home of your own, the plan from Sinn Féin for housing, if you look at, the Sinn Féin health service plan, you compare like for like, you can see the specific commitments, numbers, timelines, costings, none of that is in the programme for government.
But Pádraig, to be an effective opposition, are you going to have to change many of your positions because you didn't get enough votes to get enough seats to be in government this time round? And if you are next time round, are you not going to have to perhaps change to suit what it seems the people want?
Well, I think there's a big opportunity for all of us on the left, and you have around 65, 66 now TDs that are on the left or are progressive. It's a very, very serious block. I think we need to work together. We need to show a clear alternative to Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil in the time ahead. Obviously, we need to hold them to account. We need to show that this programme for government is full of vague references. There's no numbers, no specifics in the key areas. And if you look at 2020, the promises they made then, they just didn't deliver. So that's our job, that's our responsibility. And we're really looking forward to working across the opposition now and, doing our job, which is holding government to account, forcing them to do what's right by the Irish people.
Okay, but how are you going to retain your enthusiasm for that over 5 years? That's a long time to be waiting to get another chance to go into government.
Well, I'm not convinced that this is going to be a stable government. We'll see. Obviously, they've offered ministerial positions, but whenever you're in a constituency and you're an independent and you have to stand over decisions that are not delivering, I do not believe for one moment that the housing crisis is going to be turned around by this programme for government that I looked at. I do not believe our crisis in the health service across all of its manifestations in the acute hospitals, in the primary care, mental health, disabilities, I do not believe it will be turned around. And I think that they'll be under serious pressure from their electorate not to stand by this government in due course.
How concerned would you be, Pádraig, that we won't have the money to do everything that the government promises if we have the Trump administration in the United States putting pressure on the foreign multinationals who are based here to repatriate their profits to America to be taxed there? If tariffs go on the various goods and services we sell to the United States, suddenly our tax base could be eroded, that our employment numbers could go into reverse.
Well, we have huge strengths, in fairness. I've talked about the negatives here, but the strengths are that we have a highly educated workforce. We are part of the European Union, that huge market of 500 million people. We speak English, which is a big asset in terms of American companies, and you can see that track record. In fairness, that's a strength that we have, and I think that those considerable strengths will outweigh whatever administration is in power in America for a 4-year term. Of course, we have to be vigilant. We can't be complacent. But I think we have huge strengths that all of us can defend Irish interests with.
Do you share that confidence, Jennifer Carroll MacNeill, that we will overcome any issues that arise with the Trump government in the White House?
Well, I certainly wouldn't take such a cavalier attitude to the Irish economy or to the jobs-based economy that we have worked so hard to create. I would take a much more careful, cautious perspective than that. And that is why we need this stable government. That's why we need this focus on the economy. And in relation to specifics, for example, at that time, we still take the view that there's an opportunity to grow jobs numbers in this country by 300,000. That's specific. And Pádraig has said there that we don't meet our targets. Enda Kenny set that target in 2011, 100,000 jobs, and he was laughed out of the room. Well, we are well more than 1 million jobs on under a series of Fine Gael governments with more people at work than ever before. And the electorate made their determination about how the economy and how society has been handled. Sinn Féin's vote went down by over 5%. They lost TDs, they lost significant vote. The electorate has had its say, and it would like a serious, credible government that is going to deal with the international challenges that are coming, that will come, and to steer the public finances and the economy and jobs and society with it through what may very well be a turbulent 2 or 4 years, depending on the outcome of the midterm elections. We take that really, really seriously. We have delivered a programme of government that is specific no matter what page I open, that is also enabling of different ambitions, where we would like to tease things out further and examine different opportunities. And this programme for government provides a platform for Ireland to be a serious, stable, forward-looking country for the next 5 years, acknowledging the external challenges we may all face.
Well, given that there are elements within America who are very sympathetic to Israel, how quickly are you going to advance the Occupied Territories Bill?
There's very considerable work to be done on that. As you know, Ireland's position was that we wanted an immediate ceasefire, the return of hostages, and the unfettered access to humanitarian aid.
We're nearly there in the last half hour. A ceasefire has been announced in the last half hour.
I didn't realise that. That's absolutely wonderful news, and I hope that sticks. We have tried to use every lever available to us to try to bring forward that ceasefire and the recognition of state.
So where do we now stand on the Occupied Territories Act?
Well, we have been doing this to try, including the EU trade agreement, to try to bring about a ceasefire. We have in this document said that we will continue to advance the Occupied Territories Bill. I think that
what does that mean? When will it come into effect?
Well, first of all, there is significant amending work. But my point is that what we have been doing is to bring about a ceasefire, which was the original Irish position that was not agreed by EU leaders. And it took many months for us to convince the rest of the EU that should, of course, be their default position. They came to that position. It is wonderful news to hear that there would be a cessation of violence in Gaza, the end of that maiming and destruction of life and all civility. That is absolutely wonderful news. And to be honest with you, I think we would be better off digesting that and seeing what stability is available in that ceasefire more than anything else. My actual interest now is what can we do on foot of that ceasefire? What can we do more now in humanitarian aid? What can we do in terms of medical evacuations? What can we do more to help rebuild and support the population of Gaza? And they are the first questions that I want to talk to the Department of Foreign Affairs, that I want to talk about in government, is what can Ireland do more now that there is a ceasefire that we weren't able to do last week to support the people of Gaza?
Well then, Pádraig McLaughlin, do we need to be pressing on with the Occupied Territories Bill if we now do have, as has been reported in the last half hour, finally a ceasefire and a withdrawal apparently by Israel from Gaza?
Yes, we do. And, when it came to the apartheid regime, it was in South Africa. Ireland led the way in terms of sanctions, and of course, starting with the famous workers at Dunnes Stores, who led the way from a community perspective, and then the government. And that was a proud stand we took back in the day. And we need to do that again. We need to make it clear that, these are occupied territories. This is a war crime under international law. We should not be doing commerce with businesses, companies that are in occupied territories, land that you have taken away and stolen from other people. So, this is very, very clear that it needs to happen as soon as possible. We in the opposition work together to make as much time available to government to do this before the elections, and now it needs to happen as soon as possible. We need to have a clear, independent foreign policy as an Irish people, which stands up for human rights.
It does.
Up for international
That's what we
law.
do. That's what we do. That is the bedrock of our foreign policy, which is about a total commitment to humanitarian law, international law, and a total focus on peace and humanitarian approach. I didn't hear Pádraig acknowledge there the actions by the Irish state well over 18 months ago, where we reduced all of the ISA funding, the strategic investment funding, from any businesses in the occupied territories. That happened a long time ago and is a very, very important statement of where Irish values were and have been for a very long time. But our focus, I'm so pleased about this news. And my first question is, what can Ireland do now in a practical way to support the people of Gaza? And where should our energy be in terms of medical evacuations, support, refugees? What can we do in a practical way? That's all I want to talk about.
Should we be taking refugees from Gaza? Pádraig McLaughlin, do you think should Ireland take refugees from Gaza?
Oh, I mean, if you look at in terms of the Syrian crisis, we did so, and I think the Irish people would support. I mean, wherever you have people who are genuinely asylum seekers, we should facilitate that, yes.
Pádraig McLaughlin of Sinn Féin, Jennifer Carroll McNeill of Fine Gael, thank you very much for joining us. We'll be